Pecha Kucha 67, Berserk, and Noir comic. So I decided to start my new year by reading Berserk, all of it. It's pretty difficult to talk about it without spoiling stuff, so it's not going to be that constructive a conversation, just touching on some things that I can get away with talking about. So what is it? It's a manga, ongoing. It was started in 1989. It's very violent. It's got a lot of sexual content. The very first scene in it is a sex scene. If you like things like Fist of the North Star, Violence Jack, MD Geist, these kind of things I grew up on, you will like Berserk. So Guts is the main character. He is the Berserker of Berserk. Uh, he starts as a kind of deranged loner on a kind of revenge mission, but the manga kind of turns into something else. It almost flip-flops between the two, but flip-flop's not a fair word. This is Griffith. He's the main antagonist. He has an incredibly complicated relationship, not only with Guts, but quite a large amount of the cast. He's intentionally androgynous. It plays into kind of major and minor themes of the manga. This is Casca. I can say just about nothing about her that isn't a spoiler, but she's super important and is the reason that the other characters, especially Guts, have motivations in the first place. So all of these three characters I just mentioned start in the Band of the Hawk for the majority of the first arc of the manga. And a lot of the sub-characters are quite interesting in their own right as well. Quite a lot of characters get backstories that are quite interesting and usually tragic. That helps. There is quite a large cast in Berserk. Puck, who's there from the very first issue, and Ishiro, whatever, who shows up much later. They become a menace in the amount of comic relief they provide, to the point where it frustrates me while I laugh. Berserk is quite violent, and they're just violently childish. Farnese she appears to be a really one-dimensional character, and then she becomes something entirely different. She has by far the most interesting character development, almost to the point of farce. So yeah, the cast is quite an interesting bunch, and this monkey-looking fella on the right is a prime example of the kind of Fist of the North Star style boss characters that show up just to get in the way of the protagonist. But some of them are so charismatic they stand out for a good long while afterwards, and he's one of them. He's a cheeky boy, this guy. So yeah, like I was saying, Guts starts off pretty anti-social, very violent. That bit doesn't change, but he does calm down a lot through being associated with such a broad range of people and consistently. And I didn't think that's what the manga was going to be when I started reading it. And yeah, this guy, sometimes when you see a character introduced from the very first panel, you can tell they're going to be your favorite. Yeah, I love this guy. I don't even think he's had his name announced. He's clearly some mysterious dude with a super important past. It's been hinted at, but nothing clearly stated. Berserk has wars going on in the background quite frequently, and one of them is led by this Sultan, who is very shady and is represented very shadily in this picture, which I love. So the world of Berserk is full of interesting things as well, and I briefly touched on it, but sometimes Berserk has kind of quite large thematical things going through it. Fear is one that comes up quite often, and desire. The motivations of characters and the investigation of who is good and who is evil kind of permeates the whole thing. Something I was aware of, but not quite to the extent, is how much Dragon's Dogma, the video game, has quote-unquote borrowed from Berserk. When a cockatrice shows up in the manga, it's almost identical to how it shows up in the game. It's there's kind of a lot of that stuff going on in Berserk, and I did find time to do a little bit of a daily sketch with a picture of Guts, and it makes me think, even if I can't accurately simulate G pens and stuff to my pleasure, just using the chalk brush gets me quite far in terms of like representing these things. So yeah, the Noir comic I'm doing with two of my friends. James has finally sent his pages and pushed the plot along quite a lot. The detectives have met on the roof to discuss some leads. James has probably done more on like the 7th page with establishing shots than me and Adams combined. He's also introduced a kind of the word escapes me, an Italian of ill repute who would be useful as a red herring or who might turn out to be the actual murderer of Rosemary. So suspect number 1 introduced, I guess. And I like this Hitchcock-esque style lighting of them going down the stairs at the top of this page. So James has given me some good stuff to look at. He's pushed the plot forward, and now I've got to figure out how forward I want to push things. Do I flesh out his characters? Do I add some of my own? And of course, steamed hams. This is my steamed hams video of the week. It's just YouTube poop style. It's you know, mirroring. It's cutting dudes and putting them over each other. It's switching around words. It's all the things you like to see in a YouTube edit. Hilarious. I strongly recommend. So what am I thinking going forward? Yeah, Berserk. It makes me think it's a real good idea for me to just collect an awful lot of reference image, because, you know, Berserk's full of like medieval castles and people fighting on horseback, and these are things I should have reference material for, so I should go get some, and then I should, you know, use that stuff to practice getting better shorthand retraction for those things, so I can just draw horses like I can draw people. And yeah, the Smiley Show really needs to be the focal point going forward. Whatever I decide to do should be in the background. The Smiley Show needs to be out. It needs to be published. It needs a home, and the Patreon needs to be happening. And yeah, all of that needs to be tied together with consistency. The reason I'm so reluctant to start is because I don't want to start and fail. It's, well, not even fail, start and stop. That happens to almost everybody I know all the time, and it would be better for me to delay starting to put everything in place to make sure that I keep going than to just, you know, bite off more than I can chew and then just vanish into the shadows. That's not on. So that brings us to the end of Pecha Kucha 67, and I will see you next time.